Good evening once again. I am your host, Super Kami Guru Alucard, aka Chris McKee, and you are tuned in to another exciting episode of my 500 favorite songs. Now, so far, we've counted 50 songs each episode. We've done 7 episodes. This is episode number 8. And moving forward, this is the third final episode, so after today's episode, you'll really get to hear the 100 you know, personal favorites of mine. And also keep in mind that while I was making this list, which I got the idea from Rolling Stones magazine, it is just purely my own personal opinion and just a way of giving different artists spotlight and a chance to shine, giving them some credit, some favorable mentions, and letting other people get a variety of music that perhaps maybe they never heard before. So before we start the countdown, quick shout outs to a few very wonderful people. Yukiko Chan, arigato gozaimasu. Shout outs to Shannon. Take care. You're always wonderful. And to all the other friends and people who are continuing to support me, thank you. It's always much appreciated. And our jazz band just released an album January 1st, the SOS Brigade Quartet, A History Lesson. So definitely go check it out now if you haven't yet. And, anyways, let's move right into the countdown now with number 150. Number 150 goes to the old school hip hop legend himself, Big Daddy Kane, and his song, Warm It Up Kane. Now, he has a lot of really good songs. He was, in my opinion, one of the greatest lyrically as far as the old school MCs to spit rhymes. He had a style that was, that's why he was the Big Daddy, because he was really the king of it in that sense. I mean, he had songs like Ain't No Half Steppin', and he even helped give a lot of early rappers their first debut appearances, people like Jay-Z and Busta Rhymes and stuff. So, he was kind of the king of the block, like the man you wanted to impress, because if you could impress him, he could really, help you shine. And Warm It Up Kane is really an example of him at his best. The beat is grooving. He produced it himself, actually, which is slamming. And then his lyrics, they're kicking ass, they're swinging, and he's just taking it back to that golden classic hip hop era, which is why I love it. 149 goes to the classic rock band Asia, which is actually a supergroup, and their song, Heat of the Moment. Now, when I say supergroup, I mean it was actually a band that was combined from members from a whole bunch of other groups that were very successful and popular before the 80s. Groups such as Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You had the keyboard player of the Bugles, and you even had John Wetton, who sang temporarily for King Crimson, and he also was in Uriah Heep. So you had all these great bands. They had broken up. These members were kind of like, what should we do for work? So they all got together, started jamming, and Asia was born. And I mean, that whole first debut album, start to finish, I mean, there's some other really great songs like Only Time Will Tell, Cutting It Fine. That record is just phenomenal. But Heat of the Moment is really the anthem that defines young love in that generation, as well as that prolific sound that no band has ever equaled since. 148 is an old soul jam by a band called Creative Source with their song, I'd Find You Anywhere. Now, I actually first heard this song as a sample in a Kanye West song with The Game called Wouldn't Get Far. That's actually the sample they used that's sped up. And it made me curious what the original song sounded like, because the sample was used in such an interesting way that I was like, wonder how that song actually sounds. But then when I actually heard the real song, I was blown away, because for a 70s soul song, it's really smooth, but it's deep, it's profound, it's poetic. It's got some really great strings, some really great vocals, great lyrics, and great bass too. And I mean, you really listen to it, it's an absolute jam, because it takes you back to a simpler time. And I mean, the way it's used as the sample in the game song is great, but nothing really compares to that original classic absolute jam by Creative Source. 147 goes to old school rapper Warren G with his song Regulate, featuring Nate Dogg. Now, Warren G is actually the stepbrother of Dr. Dre, and he started a group in Long Beach, California with Snoop Dogg, a fellow rapper, and Nate Dogg, who sings on the song. He was a singer. So, Warren G was going to be the producer, the DJ, and together they were going to be the group. Snoop was going to be the rapper, Nate was going to be the singer. And they made a demo, and at a party, they actually were able to get that demo to Dr. Dre, and that's when he started bringing him on Death Row Records and making all the classics. Now, Warren G and Nate Dogg made appearances on a lot of these Death Row Records, but they actually didn't get picked up with a contract from Death Row Records. Snoop was really given the stardom and the spotlight, which I think kind of alienated Warren G and Nate Dogg for a time. They went their own separate ways. Warren G went his own way, made his album Regulate, the G-Funk era, which has this song, and it also had another smooth jam called This DJ. And the whole album shows, just like this song, that you can't step to Warren G because he's just as tight as Dr. Dre, in some ways, maybe even better. 146 goes to Japanese rock pop singer Maon Kurosaki. Wanted to make sure I said that right. With her song Return to Destiny, which is used in the soundtrack for the anime High School of the Dead, or HOTD. And actually, she composed all the ending theme songs. They basically had one opening main song by another group, which I actually mentioned earlier in a different episode. But this was my favorite of her ending theme songs because they got a different artist to do different ending themes for different episodes. Sadly, they never continued the show because I guess the writer had died, so we'll never get to see any more sort of songs of this theme that she would do, but that one was my personal favorite just because the unique use of English lyrics mixed with like sort of the Japanese metal pop rock. It's an incredible vibe that really it inspires you. It's uplifting and it's even motivational and inspirational in many ways. 145 goes to the legendary singer and Grammy winner, songwriter, composer Elton John with his song I'm Still Standing. Now, he has so many songs. I mean, this man has won Grammys. He has composed songs that are just considered timeless, and he really is sort of the master on the piano of his era as far as you look at. He has transcended every era's genres. He has become a pop figure. He has become like a rock and roll smash, as you hear in his early, you hear just the evolution of him as an artist. It's fantastic. But what makes this song great is if you actually learn about the personal struggles he was going through, this is what gave it new reverence and relevance for me, was that song was coming from a very vulnerable personal place in his life. His co-writer had written it for him because he had gone to rehab. He kind of fucked up a lot of things in his life, and he was re-examining his life and his career, but he was still standing. He still could come back, make more music. He was still alive, and that determination itself too is also very inspiring. 144 goes to BTS member Suga, aka Agust D, and his self-titled song Agust D, because he actually is such a great rapper on that song, mixing like the combination of really fast Korean, a touch of Japanese and English too throughout it. It's phenomenal the way he juggles all of them and keeps it on beat with such a fast, steady rhythm. In fact, everybody's really big on BTS. I'm not really the biggest fan, being honest. They have a few good songs I've heard. Okay, that sounds good. But what I always listen to when somebody's like, oh, listen to this BTS song is, I want to hear Suga's on it because that's always the one who impressed me the most. And a lot of really die-hard fans, like people who call themselves like in the army and stuff, they'll tell you, oh, you can't have a favorite. But personally, I guess that's why I'm not like a die-hard fan or in the army. But I think Agust D is really the best one of the whole crew, straight up. 143 goes to the legendary rhythm and blues and soul singer Donny Hathaway and his song Little Ghetto Boy. Now, besides being used as a sample on a very popular Dr. Dre song with Daz Dillinger and Snoop Dogg on it, this song itself, it was recorded on his live album. And for a live album, it's a phenomenal record. I mean, he took covers of songs that he had written for other artists because he was a very good songwriter and composer at that point. But then he also started to perform his own original material songs like Little Ghetto Boy. And it's sad that like he died so tragically and accidentally before his time because he was a remarkable singer, beautiful voice that it feels like everybody since he came out has tried to capture just that little bit of fire and soul that he had when he sang, and they've never duplicated. But I mean, so many artists have given him credit. I mean, even people like Justin Timberlake praise him. So that shows you it's transcended into the modern era. And he was also a great pianist and composer, which is one thing people often overlook. 142 goes to the British rock group Kaiser Chiefs and their song I Predict a Riot. Now, I first heard of them because they're a British band over there, and it was watching actually an episode of the Brit Awards on Much Music. Like they were showing you basically the broadcast of it going on over there and seeing like all the different British groups. I was amazed because they had some really good music over there. In fact, they have some of the best most classic sounding rock, I would say, of the modern era over there. People like Arctic Monkeys, Franz Ferdinand, and then, of course, Kaiser Chiefs, which they have a lot of really great songs like Oh My God, Never Miss a Beat, Ruby. But I Predict the Riot was that first one they performed on that show that really just stopped the crowd, blew me away, and I was like, I like the energy of this group. Like, they remind me totally of that old, like, British rock mixed with a bit of punk and edge, and it's just delightful. Absolutely delightful. 141 goes to the old school hip hop crew, Run DMC, and their song, You Talk Too Much. Now, they have a lot of other great songs, like people know, obviously, Sucker MCs, um, it's like that. Walk This Way is obviously a lot of people's personal favorite because of the remix duet with Aerosmith. But what I really loved about You Talk Too Much, like the beat was really old school, it was simple, and that's kind of what makes it good. But what makes the song so great is how funny it is and how witty the lyrics are, and that's kind of what shows. Even old school rappers had their peaks when sometimes lyrically they were better than a lot of the gangster rap that came later and tried to imitate their style. But with that song, you basically get the sense that they're rapping about a very annoying person that they wish would shut up. And the way they're using all these analogies and metaphors and parables and like to make a statement of like this person really needs to shut up. It's just it's priceless. You can't beat it for old school hip hop. 140 goes to the legendary pianist and composer Willie the Lion Smith and his song Fingerbuster. Now, this is originally based on a composition that the pianist of the ragtime era, Jelly Roll Morton, came up with. But after a competition in a club where it was basically known as the cutting or carving contest back then, it was at a rap party, and Willie challenged him, and he said, "Okay, you take over the right hand, I'll play the left hand, and I'm gonna make you remember piano as long as you did." And he could. He actually was able to outplay Jelly Roll's right hand, which most pianists have the strength of the right hand as playing the main melody, and yet Willie could outplay him with the bass line melody on the left hand. And from then on, he kind of would refer to Jelly Roll as Mr. One Hand because he could school him. And that became his piece because he had evolved it into Fingerbuster. So whenever new pianists would come to town and he wanted to challenge him to see how good he were, he would play that just to demonstrate like you can't mess with the line. 139 goes to the R&B singer Erykah Badu and her song Window Seat. Now, I first heard this song around the time that I had graduated high school and I was getting ready to start college. In fact, this was actually a CD I bought when I had started college. And it was a very great CD, very unique mix of jams, R&B with hip hop and a whole bunch of different sort of wild electronic elements. It really made it a wild experience to listen to the record. But Window Seat really stood out as one of those songs that really made me appreciate Erykah Badu like as a singer, but also as a songwriter and as an artist because there's just a really priceless, pure, and mystical quality of like searching for the reason and the meaning behind one's existence throughout the song, and sometimes feeling lost, but wanting to get away and see the world so that you can maybe find yourself. And just the way she makes it into such a profound song, it's incredible. 138 goes to the old school rapper and member of the Ghetto Boys as well, but it was from his solo album, Bushwick Bill, and his song Ever So Clear. Now, Bushwick Bill was a very unique, kind of wild, crazy rapper in the Ghetto Boys. He was kind of the crazy, wild, short, reckless one because he was very, very short. He was actually only 3'8", and he was actually in some ways one of the most lyrically unpredictable and wittiest in the group. For that reason, he would take very strange ideas to sort of make analogies or metaphors about his size, like the idea of him being the size of Chucky. He made a song like relating himself to Chucky. It was funny. But he also did serious songs like My Mind Playing Tricks on Me after he got in an accident. And what had happened was he had become very depressed, suicidal, because people just kind of were shitting on him for being short. And he just was tired of it. So he'd actually got his girlfriend to shoot him through the eye. He didn't die. The bullet ricocheted off his skull and went out, and he lost the eye. He had a glass eye put in it. Now, the cover for the Ghetto Boys' next album actually was them pushing him to the emergency ward because they didn't know if he was going to live or die. But having survived the experience, they put him on My Mind Playing Tricks on Me, which was the Ghetto Boys' biggest single. And then he also went on to make his own album, Do Ever So Clear, which is the story of all that. It's incredible. Definitely listen to it, but keep in mind it's tough to stomach at times because it's based on a true story. 137 goes to the 90s rock grunge band Soundgarden and their song Black Hole Sun. Now, when I first heard this song, I thought it had a very almost like scary apocalyptic quality, but almost like a slow sort of dream-esque quality to it. It's very deep the way the singer Chris Cornell, may he rest in peace because he passed away actually a few years ago now. Um, the way he sings sort of the idea of the lyrics mixed with this almost deep, intense, haunting melody that almost carries farther than the notes would tell you is it's just very hard hitting, and you could almost hear from a sense of pain in the song that maybe that's why the man was so troubled and why things ended the way they did for him. It's very tragic because he was a very talented artist, and I think that's one of those gems that everybody remembers Soundgarden for, and what a genius he really was as the band's leader. 136 goes to Caribbean singer Eyan with his song Something This Good. Now, I first heard this song in a movie I watched on TBS late one night back when they did movies or whatever, before it became Peachtree Television. I don't even know what it is now, but I had watched this movie called Getting Played, and it was in the soundtrack because this movie was just for TV, right? So even finding any songs from the soundtrack, and there were some really good, like underrated songs that they used for this. A few other songs I had mentioned too, or will mention, and this was one of them. And I trying to find the song, I was like, what was that song with that really good piano or that nice singing about something this good never lasts, but if it did last, I'd want it to last forever. Like, I had to find the song. So eventually combed through the internet, used all the like downloading sites of the day, Blubster, Liveware, all that cheesy stuff. Eventually I found it, and that's what it was. And something this good. And I was like, that song is, it was worth the struggle to find it because it's great. 135 goes to the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, and his song Thriller, which also there was the album of that title, became the biggest selling record of all time. And it's crazy because, like, it is a phenomenal record, and that really is like the defining song of the record. And I don't know if it's really like the cheesy Halloween elements or if it's just that catchy, like, crotch grabbing 80s groovy beat that like gets you going to dance to it. But I think personally, what I love about the song that makes it like my favorite of the songs is also the fact that it has Vincent Price doing sort of the scary thriller rap on it, because I'm a huge Vincent Price fan. I loved all his old movies, and hearing him actually get to rap on Michael Jackson's song, if anything, that was like the most badass Michael Jackson could ever be on a record. I mean, you see how he went on to do songs like Bad, and the way he was tough and beat it. That's what he was bad. This was definitely what he made Thriller for sure. Because I mean, Vincent Price just he killed that rap enough. You didn't even need Michael Jackson. That just added icing on the cake. 134 goes to the rapper and Wu-Tang Clan member GZA, who is also the leader, with his song Swordsman. Now, this came out on his second album because his debut actually was before he had joined Wu-Tang Clan. It was released under the title GZA the Genius. Sadly, Cold Chillin', the record label, didn't promote it much. It flopped. Shortly after that, he met RZA, an old dirty bastard. They met a few other guys like Ghostface Killah, Method Man, Raekwon, Inspector Deck, You God, and Master Killer, and Wu-Tang Clan was born. Now, what Swordsman really defines as GZA's masterpiece of a solo track, the verses are great, the hook is catchy, he really puts rappers in the place that he's sort of the hip 90s master that has existed since the old school 80s era, because that's when his debut came out. And he truly is the leader and the swordsman because of that song. 133 goes to the R&B singer John Legend and his song Green Light, which also features rapper Andre 3000 of the rap group Outkast. Now, this song is such a masterpiece of a gem that it's like it bridges into so many things. Like, it's such a fast beat that it's really like, a techno-y dance kind of groove. But then you add in John's beautiful R&B singing, Andre's crazy, mad fast, Outcast style rapping, and then you have sort of the jazzy horn sections and the melodic counterparts of the melody with like the dance groove, the drums, playing these really jazzy, beautiful, pretty gems in the background that just make it such a luscious, broad, wide masterpiece that it's probably one of the greatest songs I've ever heard, in my personal opinion, as far as the way it's such a good commercial hit, and yet musically it sounds so phenomenal too. 132 goes to blues singer, songwriter, and guitarist Muddy Waters and his song Sugar Sweet. Now, he has tons of other really big, popular, well known songs such as I Can't Be Satisfied, Hoochie Coochie Man, Manish Boy. But this one always stuck out as one of my personal favorites because Little Walter plays some fantastic harmonica on it. It's got that signature Willie Dixon stop bass groove. Um, Muddy's actually singing more of a kind of romantic-y, jazzy, sweet blues tune to it. But overall, it was probably one of the last really good peak highlights of the era when all these great musicians played together with Muddy, when Muddy was at his best. He went on to do other things like tour Europe and start playing with electric stuff. But overall, that era of Sugar Sweet was just the true classic chess records masterpiece. 131 goes to Green Day with their song Minority. Now, they have a lot of other really great songs like Basket Case, Insomnia, American Idiot, Boulevard of Broken Dreams. The list goes on, but the reason I chose Minority as a personal favorite is the ironicness, the punk attitude, the upbeat groove, the kind of funny attitude that they approached the song with. And this was around the time that they made songs like Time of Your Life. The lead singer had gone through a terrible divorce, written that song. And they really were getting to their socially conscious roots that became very predominant in sort of their punk rock act on like American Idiot. But I found in some ways that was some of their most deepest and profound music was around the era they made Minority. 130 goes to Debussy with his composition Clair de Lune. Now, you've probably heard it so many places. It's one of those classical pieces that everybody heard or has heard, and they don't realize they've heard it, but it's very beautiful. It's simple. It almost seems like the perfect sort of piano piece you would want to have playing in the background if you were having a nice cup of tea at night, just looking at the moon under the stars. Like, everything was peaceful, it was calm, and it almost seems like there's a romantic, mystical element and a quality to the melody that really take it to, you feel almost like if this was like a date and you were looking at the stars and the moon, you would be in a cafe in Paris sipping that tea. And just the way he really paints that picture musically, just with the notes he plays on the piano and the way he writes the composition, it's just brilliant. And that's why Eric Satie had a lot of respect for him as well, I think. 129 goes to the legendary jazz saxophonist Sonny Rollins and his composition East Broadway Rundown. Now, this came from an album of the same title, and it was actually one of the last albums he recorded before he took a very long hiatus from the music industry. Now, he had played with a lot of the great legends. He'd learned from people like Thelonious Monk, and he had become sort of a master on the tenor saxophone in his own right. Now, you look at the way he plays the most wild, crazy, sort of amazing shit he has ever played in his whole career throughout that record, and some of his most wild, free spirited stuff, too. It's fantastic. Now, the song is a meditation, a journey in itself. In fact, I actually listened to it for the first time when I took my jazz class, and it really was an experience. Now, like the way the drums are, the bass, everything else, the trumpet player too, it's great. But then Sonny really he takes it to a whole new stage of pure faith, and that's the faith he probably took on that journey when he went to go meditate on the bridge and stop playing music for all those years. 128, oddly enough, I had mentioned them sort of just a few songs earlier, the Ghetto Boys with their song My Mind is Playing Tricks on Me. Now, the group is composed mostly of Willie D, Scarface, and Bushwick Bill. Now, the song was originally intended to just be a solo for Scarface on their record, We Can't Be Stopped. But then Bushwick Bill had the accident, and Willie D was going through some things at the time too. So the record producer at the time thought it would be a better idea because the beat was so funky and bumping too to get them each to tell a story in between what Scarface was going to tell as his two verses of the song. So, and they basically lay out each person's story. Scarface tells two stories, and in between, it's sort of left with a chorus of a melody that makes you sit there and think like, wow, times always change, and you wonder if you're going crazy or if the world's crazy. And just the way they capture that, it's a timeless masterpiece of hip hop in its prime. 127 goes to the classic rock band Van Halen and their cover of the Kinks song You Really Got Me. Now, the Kinks song is actually very good. It's not that I don't like it. I think that Ray Davies did a wonderful job writing it. The melody is great. The vocals are great. I find that what Van Halen brings to the excitement of the song is they play it just as good as the Kinks, but then because you have Eddie Van Halen ripping the solo and sort of supercharging the hypeness of the song with his guitar in the background, improvising over the original Kinks melody as well. That's what hypes the song and takes it to another level. I mean, they had done so many other sort of masterpieces and great classic songs later on, and that whole first album, start to finish, I mean, it's just phenomenal and it's almost untouchable for its genre. But that song, to take a classic song by such a great group as the Kinks and such a great song by them, and to do it as well as it did, that's what really shows Van Halen was sort of the greatest rock band of the moment when that record dropped, you know? 126 goes to the legendary Big O, or Roy Orbison, and his song In Dreams. Now, he has a lot of really other great songs, and it's sad that he died when he wasn't even really that old, and he'd kind of had quite a few struggles in his career after the early days of Sun Records working with Elvis and Johnny Cash. He had kind of hit like a dry spot for a while, but then he started to re-record some of his music, and he formed a supergroup called the Traveling Wilburys, and that really helped him sort of set the stage for his comeback. Now, he was working a lot, kind of working overkill, overtime, just to kind of make up for the loss of his career for all those years. And that's what they say put the strain on his heart. He had overdone it, and that led to his demise. Now, this song is a masterpiece because it shows that he really was the greatest male singer of his time, as Elvis even said, because of the vocal range he had. The way this song is so simple, yet it takes you on a trip. It lets the melody and the story of the song unfold, and that's why David Lynch even used it in Blue Velvet, because it's one of those songs that gets you deep in here and just never lets go once you get it. 125 goes to the old school rapper Slick Rick with his song Children's Story. Now, this song came out on the album The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, which was one of the first old school hip hop albums of its time. And I mean, he had started out sort of on the underground scene, rapping with a beatboxer named Dougie Fresh, and he made a big name for himself. But then it wasn't until he actually got signed and started to like really lay out stuff like Children's Story that he became a really major success. Now, for a while, he had actually been deported. He had legal issues because he actually came from England originally, and he had actually gotten into a bar fight where he got stabbed. That's why he always wore the eye patch over his eye like a pirate. But you hear Children's Story, and you see why he was one of the greatest old school rappers, because he was the master of storytelling, and that song proves it. 124 goes to the reggae artist Yellow Man with his song Zunga 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 Zang. Now, this song has been sampled, imitated. In fact, the one thing the artist himself was always a bit bummed out and sad about, he basically reported in an interview, was that he wished somebody else would have covered it. Now, it's got some really great typical reggae sounds to the melody, some really nice horns, great guitar, and a very catchy, simple rhythm to the lyrics and the melody. Now, he's using a lot of slang, a lot of patois, and the typical North American audience might not even understand what he's saying because of like the usage of it in such a condensed formula. But overall, it's one of the greatest reggae songs of all time. It's a masterpiece, and sadly, the man actually does suffer with a disorder that made him have yellow skin. So he was always made fun of as a young kid, and that's how he kind of made the comeback and got the last laugh, becoming, big reggae singer. 123 goes to Jefferson Airplane and their song White Rabbit, which is basically based on the story of Alice in Wonderland. It's got a lot of symbolisms, drug references. It's got a very psychedelic, mystical quality to the melody that's very predominant in early 60s rock. That was really cool. You hear that stuff in like The Doors and even bands like Cream. And what makes this song great is it really is a trip because they take you through that classic story of Alice in Wonderland, but they almost make it like a statement that it makes you think like about life in such a profound and deep way, and then you wonder like, is it all in your head? And it's kind of funny because the way you could interpret the story, the way you could interpret the song, there's so many different ways to interpret it, and that's what I think makes the song just as good as the story. It's a fantastic masterpiece in that regard. 122 goes to the rapper from Detroit, signed by Dr. Dre, Eminem, and his song, I'm Shady. Now, this was the peak of his career, the prime of his music and skills, I find, because he had actually had some of his best music come out early on in the underground era when he dropped Infinite independently. Now, the album was a flop, only sold 1,000 copies. Music I have heard from it is actually phenomenal, though, and it was some of his best work. It's just he was really trying to just be true to himself and not really fit any sort of marketable image, which that's what made it not sell so well. Now, when he had actually made the Slim Shady EP, he had kind of evolved his style more, focused on some more deeper, wilder aspects of his life and his personality, and that's what you hear carry over to the Slim Shady LP, his big first mainstream debut. Now, this song is the defining album that really makes him great as an artist. That's when he was at the peak of his skills, and this song really is him singing at his best, rapping at his best, and the beat, you just can't go wrong with it. 121 goes to Smokey Robinson and the Miracles with their song, The Tracks of My Tears. Now, this was originally released as one of those classic jams of rhythm and blues out of Motown that had that soul that just sort of captivated audiences everywhere in a very special way. And I mean, the way you hear the Miracles backing Smokey up, who has this very beautiful, high, powerful voice, like you would honestly feel like somebody kicked him in the balls at times just to make him squeal, like just that high, perfectly, right? But it's so good. He really was such a great singer and artist, and they had a lot of really great songs, but that to me, that was always the song that hit me the hardest, I would say, in here, and that's the one I always liked the most because of the melody, the groove, the way the Miracles are backing him up, and the way he just sings that lament of feeling like a clown and a fool to have lost the one he really loved so much, and that if you weren't looking at his face, like with the clown's makeup, you would see the tears behind it all. It's very deep. It's profound and wonderful. 120 is the classic rock and roll jam by Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good. Now, so many people have heard that just because of the iconic Back to the Future scene, but I mean, that was a song that when I was a kid and started listening to rock and heavy hard rock and heavy metal and all that early stuff. Like I did listen to rock and roll like Elvis and stuff, but I was always more big on Chuck Berry because of songs like Johnny B. Good. And in fact, when I was at one of my birthday parties, one of my friends had got me like a Chuck Berry greatest hits. It had songs like Maybelline, Roll Over Beethoven, My Dingling, great songs like that. And then of course, cause it had like Johnny B. Good, I got to hear that, like just him playing it the full original way. And wow, man, like he was great. He was great for evolving rock and roll. You could hear the roots of everything before him and everything that was going to come after him all in one. And Chuck Berry really was, in my opinion, like just as important to rock and roll as Elvis. 119 goes to Tatsuya Ishii with his song River. Now, I first heard this song as an ending song on Gundam Seed Destiny's soundtrack, and when I heard it, I immediately thought like, wow, this guy's got like a wonderful, smooth, beautiful, charismatic voice. And then like I've even seen him perform it live, and like him with his guitar, man, he's just grooving, and he really pours his soul into the melody and the lyrics of the song. And what it's really about too that makes it such a deep, profound song that fits the show is that life is like a river, and destiny, if you look at life being like destiny and that river, it's ever flowing. It's always going downstream. You never know where it's going to lead. If it's going to go through rapids, if it's going to go through waterfalls. You know, life is just like that. It's ever flowing, just like a river. 118 goes to the underground rapper Papoose with his song Alphabetical Slaughter. Now, the crazy thing about this song is it really cemented, even underground, Papoose status as lyrically one of the greatest rappers to ever exist, because what he did with the song, it made it so amazing and groundbreaking that even when it was released without a record deal, not even on an album, just on a DJ's mixtape, once it hit the streets, everybody was downloading it on LimeWire, Blubster, all the big like downloading sites at the time, just because the buzz was so hot. Because he takes random letters that they yell out and they basically go from A to Z. And every time they yell out a letter randomly, he raps every word starting with that letter. And it's just phenomenal the way he perfectly fits it all together, A to Z. And that's what makes Papoose still one of the greatest, just because of that song. Next, we have 117 with the Highwaymen and their song, Highwaymen. Now, the Highwaymen are a super group, country group, composed of Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, and Waylon Jennings. Now, they actually, all four of them did a movie together, which was a remake of a John Wayne movie called Stagecoach. It was very great together. But they did actually make a record together, and the four of them were phenomenal. I mean, you had four really great just artists, not even country artists, just artists in general that were great singers, great songwriters, and then to put all four of them together, it was phenomenal. Now, what makes this song the masterpiece of the record, the really great moment of all four of them singing together, is they each tell their own sort of part of the story, and that's what makes it a marvelous song, not even for country music, but just for music as a whole. So, bravo, Highwayman. It's wonderful. 116 goes to the piano man himself, Billy Joel, and his song, Why Should I Worry? Which was actually recorded, written, and performed by Billy in the movie and on the soundtrack. Now, the cool thing about this song, I really love it because it shows what a great composer, singer, and songwriter Billy Joel was. Like, even taking the song for a kids' movie soundtrack aside, it's a really great, well put together song. And I've actually heard many different versions of it, just because the melody, the way the lyrics are written, it's fantastic. But because other countries have different languages, I've heard the French, the Japanese, the Romanian, and the Spanish version of the song, and they're all very distinct but very cool ways of playing on the melody. I actually love the Japanese version and the Spanish version as well. The Romanian's pretty cool too. But just overall, that is a really great song. I think that was one of the best Disney songs ever made. So there you go. 115 goes to the underground rapper Immortal Technique and his song Dominant Species. Now, he's done a lot of really great songs. Despite being an underground artist, he sold actually quite a few thousand records, estimated over 10,000 at least. I would say maybe even closer to a million at this point. Who knows? But yeah, even though he's underground, he's gotten a buzz for songs like "Dance with the Devil," "The Cause of Death," "Freedom of Speech," "Obnoxious," things like that, right? But "Dominant Species" actually stood out always as one of my favorite songs by him. Not only because of the really hard, edgy, driving dark beat to it, but just the way he actually uses all these different analogies. There's some of my most favorite and clever lines that he ever raps because, I mean, the way he says the one part, my enemies are obsessed with me like the bitch of misery, that's something I could actually relate to. So I was like, you know what? This cat's fresh, man. And that song proves it for sure. 114 goes to the legendary jazz vibraphonist, singer, and basically band leader Roy Ayers in his song Searching. Now, he's also done a lot of other very big hits which have been known throughout the funk and jazz sort of music genres and scenes since the 70s. And recently they brought back Everybody Loves the Sunshine. I seen them use it in like some sort of beer or alcohol commercial. But that song's been sampled. In fact, they actually speculated once Roy Ayers was the most sampled jazz, soul, and funk artist of all time. And Searchin' is a great example of a song that's been sampled and still retains its purity and its musical genius and beauty in its original form. I mean, the way he sings the lament of trying to find understanding and the meaning of life to that groovy, jazzy beat, he whips the vibraphone solo. He's also got some nice horns, great piano. You really can't top Roy Ayers on that song because that's when he was at his peak. 113 goes to my personal favorite by the Ramones, Pet Sematary. Now, they've also done quite a few other songs I really like Sheena is a Punk Rocker, Rock and Roll High School, I Want to Be Sedated, Blitzkrieg Bop. The list goes on. But the reason I chose Pet Sematary is because they were actually specifically asked to do that song for the soundtrack by Stephen King himself. That's because he was actually quite a big fan of the Ramones. In fact, when he was writing the book of Pet Sematary, the main character that he bases the story around, uh, ironically, he ends up being a fan of the Ramones and quoting many songs by the Ramones and hearing Ramones playing. So, because there were themes of the Ramones, Stephen King's like, hey, would you guys actually do a song for the movie? They were delighted because they actually like Stephen King's work, and they add sort of their own fresh spin on Stephen King's story, a dark kind of more slow and unique sort of sounding song for the Ramones. That's what makes it so good. Is they really sound more distinct than they ever did on a lot of their previous songs, which sound very similar. This one is sort of in a field of its own. 112 goes to the legendary funk group and soul group from way back in the day. They had actually started in the 50s. They did the song, ironically, Twisted Shout, which the Beatles did and made very famous as a hit. But the song I picked for them is their biggest hit. It was number one on the charts for a long time, and it was called Between the Sheets. Now, this song has been sampled more times than I can count. Like, to just even list a few examples, Notorious B.I.G., Gwen Stefani, Big L, like, you name it. Like, everybody has sampled this song because of the bomb, bomb, bomb. Jay-Z, Drake, etc. The list just goes on and on. It's kind of crazy. But the reason it is such a smooth, mellow groove is because it really was stripping away the, like, rough rhythm and blues sound that the Isley Brothers had previously on their records and just giving it more of a smooth, polished soul sound to the funk. And that's what really elevated funk and solidified it as a genre and bridged the roots of R&B before it with jazz and whatnot. 111 goes to the blues rock group ZZ Top and their song Sharp Dressed Man. Now, they have so many great songs I love. I love the song they did Back to the Future Double Back. That was a great song. They also did another song for the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, She's Just Killing Me. And the reason I had to sit there and actually evaluate, okay, what's overall my favorite song, why this one comes to mind, is I heard this one in Twin Peaks, which was cool. But I had heard that long before because this was always the one that everybody seems to love and recommend of ZZ Top. It actually came from their best-selling album, I believe it was called Eliminator. And this was an album where they had actually gotten the formula and the system of making music together so well down as a band, always having the original members mostly, that like a lot of the members didn't even have to be there. It was mostly the lead singer and guitarist Billy Gibson and just him doing his thing. And from there, that's when they developed like that sound with Eliminator and Sharp Dressed Man. 110 goes to Mace with his song 24 Hours to Live, featuring DMX, Black Rob, and Deluxe, which is basically Chic, Luch, Jadakiss, and Styles P. Now, This song was great because Mace was always one of those really underrated rappers that because he came out in a very competitive era around Tupac before he was B.I.G., which oddly enough he was on the same label too. In fact, some people speculate that had his career not gone down the toilet and he became a pastor, turned to God, and basically started making gospel rap, they said he actually could have probably succeeded Biggie because his first album, Harlem World, with songs like this and Feel So Good with Diddy and Kelly Price, he had some really big hits on the charts. The album sold very well. But his second album did not duplicate the success. And I think it's because he just really was trying to have more of a clean approach than his first, and that just didn't work. 109 goes to the legendary composer and pianist James Price Johnson, James P. Johnson, and his song Carolina Shout, which has been covered by every great pianist around the era he came out in and after. I mean, if you look at it, it's like it started out with he composed it, then people like Duke Ellington and Willie the Lion Smith started playing it, and then here's the thing, Fats Waller played it. In fact, he actually impressed Willie and James P. himself because he could actually play the tune and improvise harmonically, enriching the melody over it better than any of them could. He could actually play their own tune better than them. So they kind of had to tip their hat off to Fats. Like, they knew, even though he was a young kid, he was a child prodigy. He was a genius and almost like a perfect technician. But still, James Price Johnson, like any of the stride pianists, learned how to play in every key, in every tempo. You look at Fats, you look at Willie, you look at James P. They all were masters of their instrument and could turn the piano into a whole orchestra. And even James P.'s version of the Carolina Shout does it just and does just that. 108 goes to the Konami Kuke Iha Club and their composition Glorious Island Fortress, which appears in the soundtrack for the video game Suikoden for PlayStation. Now, if you guys never played the game or heard the tune, you wouldn't be familiar with what I'm talking about. But if you ever do hear it, it's one of those magical tunes that it's like, of all the video game soundtracks, this would be like, if I was to say, okay, there's only one piece from a video game soundtrack I would ever listen to as like a full real song or composition and cherish and love and appreciate and like really love just as much as like a real song because the quality of the melody, the instruments, everything is so good and perfect and on point, it would be this theme. It would be this song because I love that game. That is probably my favorite video game, and that might play a part of it too. But that theme itself is just, it's inspiring. It feels like, you know what, if you're going to war, if you're trying to strive for your dreams, you're trying to find true love, no matter what your journey or your quest is for the destiny of your future, that is good, hype, inspiring theme music for that. 107 goes to the pop alternative rock group Depeche Mode and their song Dreaming of Me. Now, they have a lot of other bigger hits like Personal Jesus, Precious, John the Revelator. But why I chose this song was this came from their first album, Speak and Spell, and even though it was in their early roots, they were still more electronic, synth pop, new wave bass. They actually had a purity and a distinctness to the quality of their music because of that. And what makes this song so great is it captures the essence of nostalgia in the 80s, that 80s sound and time on the keyboards and the synths, but in a very distinct, almost mystical way. That it's like if I really had to go back and hear like an 80s pop song on the keyboards, that's just the one I would want to hear, if that makes sense. 106 goes to Hironobu Kageyama and his song Shara et Shara, which inspired one of my songs called Het Shara. But the reason I like it is it's actually the main Japanese theme song for the anime Dragon Ball Z. And it's a great song because it's actually very inspiring. It has a very positive message of as long as you like chase after your dreams and wishes, you can kind of fly into the sky with them and you don't need to worry. You can just relax, have a good time. And that's what actually Het Shara and Japanese slang would be like "hetera," like it's no worries, like no problems, no real stress or issues around it. And it's a very good opening theme song, especially for a show like Dragon Ball Z that has the nostalgia of being one of those kids shows that everybody watched as a kid, and then to have that wonderful positive song. Like you don't really get to hear it in the North American audiences, but you go back and watch the original Japanese or even the DVDs where they play it, you get to see just how great that theme song was too. 105 goes to the underground rapper Cormega and his song Journey. Now, he is a really great rapper that basically got the attention making appearances on early work with The Firm, a supergroup composed of Nas, AZ, Foxy Brown, and originally Cormega but was replaced by Nature. Now, oddly enough, he had some contract disputes trying to get his original debut album out, The Testament, and he had started recording it with Columbia Records, didn't like the contract, didn't sign it, so they basically blacklisted him from the industry, shelved his album, and it was like never to see the light of day for many years. But then, oddly enough, the crazy thing was he had managed to record around the blacklisting restrictions, put out another album, and eventually save up enough to buy the rights to that album. Now, this album Journey came quite a few years later, but I think it's a retrospective of all the struggles he had to go through as an artist leading up to that moment, which is really what makes the song and his story so profound. 104 goes to the man in black himself, Johnny Cash, and his song, Get Rhythm. Now, he has many classic songs that lots of people know him for. I mean, I love A Boy Named Sue, One Piece at a Time, Ring of Fire, Walk the Line. The list goes on. But the reason I chose Get Rhythm, because as a kid, that was a song that really inspired me and influenced me and stuck on me. Because just the overall symbolism of what he's singing, like it get rhythm if you get the blues. Like if you're feeling down, you got the blues, and do something good with it. Make it positive, make it into music. And that was something I could always identify with and relate to. Simple as it is, it's beautiful and I love it. And like the way he sings it, the way he tells the story of just sort of the perspective of the shoe shine boy who's down on his luck, but he still just hops around and shines those shoes with a smile on his face because he's got the rhythm with his blues. And just overall, that's the man in black, like at his best. 103 goes to the Japanese pop singer Kanon Wakeshima with her song Still Doll. Now, this actually appears as the ending theme to an anime called Vampire Night, and the animation and sort of like the way the creepy credits unfold with the song makes it that much more eerie. But the song actually has a deep, sort of profound sadness and sorrow woven within it that like actually makes it such a beautiful and touching song. Like at first, because of the animation, it appears more scary than it really is if you actually sit there and understand sort of the sorrow and depth behind what the singer is singing about. Feeling like a still doll because they're just almost like a toy for the one they love to play with, but they don't really have any free will or control of their own. And I was like, wow, that's deep. It's sad, but very profound and beautiful in its own way. 102 goes to the legendary singer and rapper and member of the Fugees, Lauryn Hill, and her song Lost One. Now, this came out on her debut solo album after she parted with the Fugees. She had quite a few other good songs on there that actually got some good attention. Doo Wop, that theme became a very big hit for her. X Factor was a good song on there. But this one stuck out in my mind because she sings really great on it. It's got this really wild, almost reggae sounding old school hip hop beat, and then the lyrics she kicks are like it's Lauren at her best. In fact, I honestly believe the way she is spitting such fire on that song, she was not only the best lyrical female MC of her time, maybe of all time at that point even, but she could really scorch almost any male rapper trying to separate just with the amount of vocabulary, skill, and perfectionism in her lyrics. Like that song proves she was untouchable in her prime. And lastly, our finale song for this evening and this episode, 101, goes to Nightmare's song, The World, which appears on the Death Note soundtrack. Now, I love the anime for Death Note. I love actually both the songs that Nightmare did for Death Note because they did the other ending song, Illumina. And then for the second season, Maximum, the Hormone actually took over and did two songs, Zetsubo Billy and What's Up People. Both great songs. I actually am a big fan of them. We'll probably get to them later on in the list. But Nightmare's song, The World, the reason I picked this one, even above Illumina, is because that one talks about seeing the corruption in the world and almost like having this desire that you would want to change, make changes, good changes. Even if you have to do bad things, you would want to make changes for the greater good just so that you could actually be proud of yourself to be a hero to like see the changes in existence. And the way they sing it, the way it's got such a beautiful melodic melody, they're dark, they're edgy. Nightmare just shreds it on that one. And that's why it rounds off the countdown tonight at 101. Well, that concludes our show for this evening. After I obviously edit it, do all the technical, you know, behind the scenes gizmo editing crap, I'll post it. You can all sort of get caught up on the countdown thus far. And then we will have two more episodes after this to round it down from 100 all the way to number one. So, yeah, basically, hope everybody's excited. The next 50 songs are literally counting down from 100 to 51. And then after that, it's the top 50. So, stay tuned. I hope you've enjoyed it all. I hope that throughout like watching these shows too, you've actually gotten inspired. Like, never heard that song. Maybe I'll check that out just to see what he's talking about. What makes it so great, right? So, if anything, then I accomplished my goal. That's all I'm trying to do. And also quick shout outs to Shiori and Heather, two very nice friends of mine who been very supportive, and Haruka Chan as well. Um, and hopefully all of you will take care. And until next time, I'm Super Kami Guru Alucard. Peace out. Oyasumi Nasai.